The National Judicial Council, that's the NJC, has recommended 22 judges for promotion to the Court of Appeal. Among them is Suzette Nyesom Wike, the wife of the Minister of the Federal Capital Territory, Nyesom Wike. Well, in a statement on Friday, NJC said 86 were recommended for appointments into different courts. The statement said the recommended judicial officers will be sworn in after approvals from President Bola Tinubu and their respective state governors. Victoria Ariwola, the daughter-in-law of Olukayode Ariwola, Chief Justice of Nigeria, was among those recommended as judges of the FCT High Court. Well, the National Judicial Council has resolved to issue warning letters to 3 judges: Inyang Ekwo of the Federal High Court, Abuja, Birkins Okolosi of the Delta State High Court, and Amina Shehu of Yobe State High Court.
Well, Inyang Ekwo is warned for abuse of discretionary power by wrongly granting an ex parte order. Birkins Okolosi of Delta State High Court has also issued a warning for failure to deliver judgment within the stipulated period in a particular case. While Ekwo is barred from elevation to a higher bench for 2 years, Birkins Okolosi will not be considered for promotion for 3 years. We're joined now by Martins Obono, who is a lawyer and executive director of Judiciary Accountability, an NGO, TAP initiative. Good to see you and thanks for your time.
Thank you so much.
I could see the smile on your face because sometimes when these things happen, people ask questions as to, is anyone watching? Is anyone observing? But again, before we get there, let's talk about the new people to be sworn in, the judges that will be sworn in at the elevation, and how the list is being accepted by a lot of people, including you and your team.
Okay, so thank you so much. I think this is a travesty, and that's how my team considers this particular list of appointment of judges that the NJC has released. We consider it a travesty because it is, first of all, a full abuse of public office, abuse of power, and I don't know how these people actually sleep, in all honesty, because if you look at Rule 11.4 of the revised Code of Ethics for Judicial Officers, you will see that it's written clearly there that in carrying out your administrative functions as a judge or as a head of court, you should not be nepotistic in your dealings. It's clear. And then you see that the CJN, sadly, appoints his daughter-in-law, having elevated his son to the Federal High Court bench as well. And then the FCT High Court judge also has his own child also being appointed in the FCT judiciary. And then you see the appointment of the accountant in the National Industrial Court also is a brother to the CJN. And then we begin to ask ourselves why, what was really happening. You know, if we say politicians are actually capturing the judiciary, then the judiciary is also capturing its own self, because this then makes us to begin to ask questions as to whether justice will really be dispensed in this particular instance, when somebody is trying to ensure that when he retires, his child takes over to continue doing the bidding of whoever appointed him in the first place.
It is a tight one, really. Are we saying, yes, nepotism definitely shouldn't be happening, but if a person is qualified, should they pay, you know, by slowing down their career progression because a relative is either in government or, in this case, in the judiciary?
So I want to be strict about the judiciary.
Are there implications really for,
yes,
you know,
so
this trend?
there are strong implications.
Right.
The people who made the Code of Ethics, for example, I didn't make it. The CJN did, and the members of the NJC, and they adopted it. In fact, this is a revised version of it, which was the CJN Justice Ariwola actually oversaw during his tenure. So it is not, I didn't make it. And then you put that in the law. It's strict in the law. It's written in black and white. It's in print, you know. And then say that people shouldn't in carrying out your administrative functions as a head of court or as a judge, you shouldn't be nepotistic. I didn't do it, so it's not.
But that clause, does it envisage this particular situation? Does it? I mean, is it all encompassing?
It's all encompassing. You envisage this kind of situation because if you sit as the chairman of the NJC, as the Federal Judicial Service Commission, who then makes appointment of judges, who passes those appointments, and then you appoint your child, or you appoint your daughter-in-law, or you appoint your brother, that's nepotism. So it is clear. And then when you look deeper into these issues, you realize that when people flout the law blatantly like this, what then happens when people aren't watching? What happens when there is no clear law for ethics and morality? In this particular instance, the law is clear. Do not do this, and then you still go ahead to do this, to carry out, to make these kinds of appointments. It's actually very, very sad, and I don't know where we are headed as a people. I don't know where the judiciary is headed.
Is a helpless case. I know NJC is the highest, in this, but is there something anyone can do now that we're flagging this, we're talking about this in so many quarters, everyone is speaking about this. Is this something that the NJC can actually cleanse itself or revisit and say, well, let's check ourselves and see where we have erred?
So it's very difficult because the composition of the CJN, who the CJN is, he's the head of the Supreme Court, he's the head of judiciary, he's the head of the NJC, he's the head of NJI, he's the head of FJC, he's the head of all the institutions in the judicial institutions in Nigeria. So he is bound to abuse powers. Whether he chooses to or not, people in the system empowers him to abuse power, because absolute power corrupts. Absolutely. And so now what we are basically looking at is to see how we can seek a constitutional amendment to ensure that Section 231 of the 1999 Constitution, as it were, that empowers the CJN and spells out some parts of the rules of the CJN, it also takes away the parts of the CJN serving as an appointee, right, and also serving as a disciplinary measure, which is the role of the NJC. Now, if you look at the disciplinary actions that were meted out against the three judges, you will see that it's quite funny, because one of them actually committed a criminal offense, strictly speaking, because you write writ of possession where there is no previous judgment. And where did you manufacture that writ of possession from? Now, if you manufactured it, that means that's fraudulent, that's falsification of documents, right? So what happens to that judge? And then you just say he was warned, while Justice Ekwo, who might have said it was a mistake, is now being suspended, being barred from promotion for 2 years and the other 3 years. So you see how it is done. If you're in the good books of the CJN, you have a pat on your back and not have too much, punitive measures against you.
It stinks. This whole thing stinks, and it comes back to what the people always say, that you can imagine the kind of judgment, the kind of harm it can cause to society. And with this, it doesn't look like a commensurate punishment for what has just transpired. How can we get this thing back? Because when we talk about the three arms and we talk about the judiciary that is making us come to discuss this, you know how to say it, especially if you say it in our local language, that's where it will sink in. What do you do? We don't do it. So what can you do? So that's what the NJC is saying by just subtle, soft punishment. How can we get things right? Because this truly doesn't look good.
So in what happened in the 2023 elections, go to court. The NJC is essentially telling you go to court, but in a very impunitive manner. So you have to, there is no recourse for anything. So what we're basically saying is that we need to continue to mount pressure, because if you look at what has happened, there was an appointment of a particular judge from Kogi State, which was the former governor of Kogi State's wife. Yeah. But there was pressure to say, no, you can't have this person isn't qualified.
And that worked.
And that worked. So I think
that... But the issue there is that of qualification in that particular, matter. But these persons who are on this list, who've been recommended by the Nigeria Judicial Council, are saying they do qualify, for the positions. So should we drop them? What exactly do you do now, in spite of the fact that they
So
qualify?
qualification is also relative, because if you look at some of the appointments in the Court of Appeal, right? I'll give you an example. One of the appointees to the Court of Appeal that was elevated from the FCT High Court has just been a judge for 2 years. But if you look at the rules that were made by the former CJN, Justice Mohammed Bello, it was clear that you have to spend 5 years minimum at the bench before you move to become a Court of Appeal justice, because you've got to have some level of experience, not just 2 years as a judge at the bench and then you're moving to Court of Appeal. So there was a reasoning behind doing that. It was to ground you, to make you more, grounded in law, because appeal is totally different from dealing with cases in first instance. So when they talk about the qualification of these people, these are the issues. Mind you, we didn't make the laws. They made the law, they made the rules. So in my opinion, I think that Nigerians need to wake up, because if we have always been holding the National Assembly accountable, say open NAS, consistently asking, demanding some level of accountability from the National Assembly, demanding some level of accountability from the presidency, no matter what happens in Nigeria, everybody is pointing at the president, whether it's a problem of local government chairman or the governor. We should do the same thing with our judges and our judges and our judicial system, I think.
Right. I mean, very good place to leave it. But very quickly, on the issue of nepotism, should these names be dropped because of the controversial nature?
There should be.
Right. Okay. Thank you very much for joining us. Martin Obono is a lawyer and Executive Director, TAP Initiative.
Thank you for having me.